welcome to your lesson on clay. We are going to be building clay sculptures. Our goal for this unit is I can use clay to create a 3D form using clay building techniques. So we're going to go ahead and talk about what all of that means and how we're going to approach this project. Now, because we are creating a clay sculpture, you are going to need clay, which is part of this course. So an air dry clay would be a good one to use. That way you can have it permanently. In school we use clay that can be put into the kiln, and the kiln is kind of like a big oven. It sucks all the moisture out and creates like a rock hard sculpture. You guys are going to use something like air dry clay so that it can dry out at home and you don't require the use of a kiln. Alright, let's go over our vocab for this unit. You should be taking notes and writing this information down in your visual journals. These are the words that you need to know. Remember that you can hit pause so that you have time to write them down. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. So hit pause if you need time to write them, and then hit play when you're ready to continue on. The first thing we're going to talk about is clay and what it is. The clay that we use in school is a stiff, sticky, fine-grained earth that can be molded when it's wet and turned into bricks, ceramics, or pottery when it's dried. So the clay that we use is actually from the earth. If you're using an air-dry clay, that is a man-made material. That means it does not come from the earth. We're going to watch a short video about how clay is made, and then we'll go ahead and continue moving on through our vocabulary. Get this over here for you guys.
The origin of so many useful things is somewhat muddy. It's in everything from bricks to tiles to dinnerware. Clay is a component of soil that, when wet, has a certain plasticity. This allows it to be shaped into hundreds of things, including the kitchen sink. There are many shades of clay. The whitest is the purest and used to manufacture things like dinnerware, sinks and tiles. Clay isn't just dirt, it's one of the most valuable resources we have. Here they excavate topsoil and gravel to find it. They dig as far down as 24 meters. The deeper they go, the whiter the clay. Fresh from the earth, the moisture content of the clay is between 15 and 22%. The particles of clay clump together, but they can easily be broken up. The clay will now be processed to a workable form. They unload it in a building without walls, so it will partially air dry. They do a visual inspection of the colour and consistency. Every few loads, they also do a chemical analysis of the mineral content. And this allows them to categorise the clay for specific purposes. Next, they transfer the clay to a revolving tub. The tub has knives that protrude up into it. As it spins, the knives hit the lumps of clay to chop them into smaller pieces. These smaller clay chunks flow out of the chopper and are moved to a hopper. The hopper feeds the clay to a mill. En route to the mill, the clay travels through heat, a flame generated by a furnace below. This is called flash drying, and it brings the moisture content down to 1 to 2%. The right consistency to now grind it into a fine powder. The grinding mill is a shaft with numerous hammers sandwiched between steel plates. As the shaft turns, the hammers swing to grind the clay lumps into a powder. The mill will also blend different kinds of clay to create specific products. The cover is closed and the mill is set in motion. The hammers pulverize the different clays into a powder. Overhead, a machine sucks up the ground clay using spinning blades and a vacuum. The cyclone effect lifts up the clay particles and leaves heavier impurities like sand behind. The result is a purer clay blend. Here are various clays, now dried, pulverized and purified. They run numerous tests on the clay. For this one, the technician presses the clay powder into a cake-like disc using a hydraulic press, at the same time weighing it. Weight can indicate the clay's pliability and the speed at which it can be cast. He fires the clay disc in an oven overnight and examines the colour to confirm that it's the correct hue. Over at the packaging station, a worker hangs open bags on spouts, which fill the bags full of dry powdered clay. The end user will add water and other ingredients to turn this particular blend into a glaze for items such as tiles and sinks. In powdered form, the clay is lighter and cheaper to ship. Some customers prefer wet processed clay, even though it's heavier. For that, they add water and chemicals to make it into a slurry. They pump the slurry through a sieve to screen out impurities. The slurry then flows into big mixing tanks, where it remains in a constant state of agitation. Continuous mixing keeps it fluid. Without it, the clay would thicken. On the day of delivery, they pump it into tankers, and then the clay is on its way. This particular batch will be used to make sinks. It's a versatile natural product that we couldn't do without. It's in your vase, your mugs, and your favourite clay pigeons, of course. There's mud in your eye.
All right, guys, so that is how clay is made. We're going to go over some more of the vocabulary. Make sure you're taking notes as you go. The first thing we're going to talk about is what is a 3D sculpture. And we've already built 3D sculptures with our paper mache. So now we are working on a clay 3D sculpture. 3D, three-dimensional means that it has height, weight, and depth. It can be viewed from multiple angles, so it's not flat. 2D is flat, 3D is something you can see from multiple angles. A sculpture is a 3D form, and it's usually made out of metal, clay, or wood. A form is a 3D shape. It has length and width, like a 2D shape, but it also has depth. So a form is a 3D shape. So there are a few different sculpture building techniques, and you will be able to use probably more of the additive technique than the subtractive technique, but it depends on what you're deciding to build. So the additive technique is when you are adding material to create a sculpture. An example of this would be clay, wax, or paper mache. So it's when you're starting from basically nothing and you're adding things to create something. Okay, so additive means you're adding material to it to build the sculpture. Subtractive means that you're removing material. So like as you can see here in this example, this was a rock face, right? A natural rock face. And they removed materials using the subtractive technique in order to create the sculpture on the rock. So that subtractive means removing material, as in wood carving or stone sculptures. All right, so some clay building techniques that hopefully you are aware of, but if you are not, we will go over. The first one that you will learn about is the one that was originally introduced to you if you took art through elementary school, the pinch pot. And it is created by using your thumb and forefinger to thin the edges and make a small bowl shape. And you can see the pinch pot there. That is a very basic example of a pinch pot. The next thing is called a coil technique, and that is where you roll clay into a long snake-like piece and attach them together to create a sculpture. And you can see in the example picture that the coil is the top portion of that clay design. Okay. Another clay building technique, and what you guys will start with when you start clay, is usually a slab. It is a flattened piece of clay that is used to build sculptures. So here you can see she's building a slab container or slab box. So it's made out of 5 different slabs. She could even use another slab and create a top for that box if she wanted to. So slab is just a flat piece of clay. In the real world, you might have heard a slab. That's what they pour as the foundation for your homes, but it is made out of concrete, not clay. So in clay building, when we are putting pieces of clay together, and this is usually more of that natural clay, maybe not so much the air dry clay, but you're going to want to use something like scoring, where you create little marks in the clay in order to attach the two pieces together. It also really helps to use your fingers to blend the pieces together, because if you just set the two pieces together and you don't kind of blend them onto each other, they might fall apart when they dry out. So make sure that you are blending your pieces together just by using your finger and kind of pressing the clay together as you go. Now you won't use this at home because you are building air dry clay, so you will probably be using paint, your acrylic paints that you have, to complete your projects. But if you were in school, and when you do come back to school in the future, if you take art again, I'm sure you will be making clay, and you will be finishing your pieces with glaze. Glaze is the paint used to make clay waterproof. It adds color and it creates shine. So you can see in the bottom picture here, right here, this is the kiln that I was talking about, that kind of oven machine that sucks all the moisture out of the clay to make it rock hard. This is showing an example of a person putting glaze onto their pottery. And then after it goes through the kiln, it comes out with this shiny finish and bright colors. And it is also waterproof at that point, so these dishes could actually be used. So that is the vocabulary. Hopefully you got your definitions written down. Don't forget you can always pause. I kind of move through this fast so that you can move at your own pace, because you are able to pause and push play as you go. So what you guys are going to be doing is you are going to be choosing, and this is from the in-class presentation, so if some of this applies to them, I apologize, like moving to a new table. You don't need to move to a new table, you're at home. But I'm going to show you some images. I want you to decide on an image that inspires you. Not that I want you to replicate it or recreate it. I want you to look at it, and if it makes you feel like it's something you want to create, then you'll use the idea or the techniques of the artwork, but I don't want you to recreate exactly what you see. I want you to use your creative brain and try to come up with ideas on your own using the techniques that you choose. So I'm going to show you a few images. You need to make a decision today about what you want to create. And in your journal, you're going to draw your piece and write down the techniques that you will use so that you are ready to start tomorrow. And if you don't have clay, make sure you get it by tomorrow or the next day, because we are only doing this in a 1-week project. So you will need to have your materials so that you can get started. And you can buy that air dry clay, usually at like Michael's. We have a Michael's right here near us now. So stop by there and grab the air dry clay that you will need. All right, so here are the idea reference pictures. And again, you're choosing one that inspires you. Feel free to pause and look at them as you go. The first one is using pinch pot techniques. So this is our very beginner kind of ideas. Okay, so you can see all of these are pinch pots. They have additional things added on to them. Obviously, they're not just straight pinch pots. It's a little more advanced than that. This is kind of a bowl idea, so where you'd be taking a variety of pieces of clay. In this example, they took like templates of a leaf and connected those all together. You could just make a straight bowl using something like a paper bowl face down. You place the clay over the top of it to get your bowl kind of form, and then you would be able to add detail to it as well. So it's the idea of a bowl as your project. Now this one is kind of a mug as your project. I liked the cactus one, but again, I'm not expecting you to recreate exactly what you see here. I want you to choose your own style of mug. If you really, really love the cactus, of course you can do it, but I would like you to choose something that you want to have forever. So, but this is the mug technique that you could possibly choose to use. And I will be providing some videos on each one of these so that once you choose your technique that you want to use, then you can address the video and kind of work your way through building your project. If you are building these out of air dry clay, you won't be able to actually use them with liquids So just keep that in mind. It would be more of like a pencil holder if you decide to go with the mug technique. The last option is to use coils to build a container. Again, this would be just something to hold things. And you would be rolling out long strips of coiled clay and connecting those pieces together to create this kind of container. So you need to decide on one of those options. And once you decide on one of those options, I want you to be designing it in your visual journal for today so that tomorrow you are ready to watch the video based on the one that you chose and kind of get an idea for how you're going to accomplish your task. Don't forget, you need to get your clay if you have not already. And if you want to, you can go on and check out the videos. I will post them onto our link as well. But if you go onto YouTube and look for Jessica Fenton, playlists, clay, you'll look for the video that you need depending on the project you chose to practice the techniques that you will need. Okay? All right, that is it for today. Make sure you've written down your notes and that you are planning, and I will see you guys tomorrow.